Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am Vivian Schiller with Aspen Digital. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a program of the Aspen Institute that empowers policymakers, civic organizations, private industry, and the public to be more responsible stewards of technology and media. So we are joined here today by the full Aspen Tech Policy Hub team. They are also a program of Aspen Digital that trains tech entrepreneurs through fellowships and executive education programs. We are so happy for you to be here today to discuss with us one of the most critical and frankly intractable challenges in cybersecurity policy today, and that is the stunning lack of diversity in the field. Some estimates show that 3/4 of cybersecurity professionals are white. That is simply unacceptable. And though many cybersecurity organizations have put out various diversity, equity, and inclusion statements over the years and goals, and even if they mean well, and there are many institutions doing great work, there's just not enough progress being made. Over the past few months, Aspen Digital and the Aspen Tech Policy Hub have convened a set of industry leaders and workforce experts to create a set of best practices around improving DE&I in cybersecurity, in the cybersecurity industry writ large. Our goal was twofold. First, to develop a set of concrete recommendations that organizations can execute on today to improve diversity and inclusion, and also to create a set of concrete and actionable recommendations that funders and other governing bodies can also take on a future forward-going basis to improve DEI in the field. So we're focused on today and tomorrow. We just shortly, a little while ago, released those recommendations in a report titled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Cybersecurity. And we are dropping that link to the report in the Zoom chat so that you can read it. Although I hope you won't read it in the next hour. Please wait until our session is done because we really have a great session today and we want your attention with us, please. So here's our plan for the next hour. First, we're going to hear from Congressman Lauren Underwood, who will give some brief introductory remarks underscoring the importance of building a more diverse and inclusive cyber workforce. Then we'll be joined by two of my hub colleagues, Mai and Meha, who will summarize the results of the recommendations released today. And lastly, we'll be joined by my hub colleague, Betsy Cooper, who will moderate a panel discussion on the results of the report and will moderate questions from the audience as well. So we do want to hear from you. The panelists include Camille Stewart of Share the Mic in Cyber. She's many other things besides Share the Mic in Cyber, including she's at Google. Karyn McMullen Harker of Accenture, Ron Ford of CISA, and Lodrina Cherne of Cybereason. I also want to offer a big thank you to the Hewlett Foundation for supporting this work. We're so glad that they were enabled this to happen, and we're thrilled to have Kelly Bourne with us here today. Finally, I want to take a moment to dedicate today's event and report release to our colleague, Sevilla Pitt. Sevilla, who spearheaded this work when we first began it last year, and she tragically died at the beginning of this year after a very short and unexpected illness. She was so passionate about making the tech industry more inclusive and equitable. And so for those of us who loved her, this event is very much in her memory. With that, I would like to introduce Representative Lauren Underwood, who will be providing some brief introductory remarks. Representative Underwood serves as the U.S. Representative for Illinois' 14th Congressional District. As chair of the House Homeland Security Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Protection, and Innovation, she is a thought leader on building a more resilient cyber workforce. We are so thrilled to have you with us today, Representative Underwood, and I am turning the mic over to you.
Well, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Underwood, and I proudly represent Illinois' 14th Congressional District. I really want to thank the folks at Aspen for organizing this important event and for inviting me to be part of it, and for the work on the report that you're presenting today. I am well aware of both the challenges and the critical importance of building a diverse cybersecurity workforce. And I am so grateful to have partners like Aspen and like the impressive panelists they've assembled for today's discussion. This is an issue I've been working on and speaking out about throughout my time in Congress. First, as a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, where I chaired the subcommittee that oversees CISA, and now as an appropriator on the Homeland Security Subcommittee. I want to set the stage for the rest of today's discussion by making sure that everybody understands why we're here today, which is to discuss a pressing national security issue. Recruiting a diverse cybersecurity workforce is not a side project. It's not a nice to have. We know it's absolutely essential to the success of our security missions in the public and private sectors. An expansive and growing scientific literature has documented the many ways that diverse teams of all kinds outperform homogenous ones, from gender diverse companies making more money to racially diverse juries examining evidence more thoroughly. In the realm of security, senior officers across the armed forces have identified the recruitment of a racially diverse officer corps as a mission-critical national security interest. Even peace agreements around the world are more likely to result in long-term stability if women participated in the negotiation process. And that's why it's so alarming that just 1 in 4 cybersecurity professionals is a woman, 1 in 10 is Black, and 1 in 25 is Hispanic. Racism is a national security issue. Sexism is a national security issue. The same goes for any other form of bias or prejudice that keeps top talent out of our workforce. These are national security issues and must be treated with the same urgency as other threats. If you only remember one thing that I say, I want it to be this: a diverse security workforce makes us safer. Probably the most obvious reason for this is we want to recruit top talent. Our nation faces evolving threats that require a whole of government and a whole of society response. We need our best and brightest minds tackling the challenges ahead of us, working across sectors and disciplines. A homogenous workforce can be a major red flag that we're failing to recruit all the available talent. If there are talent pools out there that we're not reaching, we need to figure out how to do better and how to get those folks on our team. Our success in staying ahead of security threats will lie in our ability to bring all that untapped talent to the table. So that's one reason why I am insistent about the urgent need to build more talent pipelines to attract the smartest people of all backgrounds into our cybersecurity workforce. The other reason is that diversity itself is a strength. This is a lesson I learned early on in my career. My background's in public health, and throughout nursing school and graduate school and my time working at the Department of Health and Human Services, I repeatedly encountered instances where lack of attention to diversity had negatively impacted real people's health and safety. For example, far too many women have had the experience of trying to get medical attention for a problem and facing a doctor or other healthcare provider who didn't believe that their symptoms were real. This is a shockingly widespread issue, and it's a particular problem with conditions that cisgender men don't experience, such as endometriosis. Despite the fact that this common disease impacts 1 in 10 women, it typically takes between 7 to 12 years for women to get diagnosed. And research suggests a major reason is that doctors don't take women seriously when they report being in pain. It's horrifying, but maybe not surprising, that issues impacting women are chronically discounted and deprioritized when male doctors still outnumber women 2 to 1. Even if women can find a doctor that believes in their symptoms, we also face challenges in getting treatment, partly because of lack of diversity in drug trials, many of which still include more men than women, or don't disaggregate their data by sex to identify potential differences in how the drugs affect different people. These data gaps mean that we're missing both promising cures and dangerous side effects that disproportionately affect women, and women are paying the price. One solution to these lethal blind spots is to make sure more women involved in setting research agendas and designing studies. And the harm caused by a lack of diversity in health fields is only compounded when we look at the intersections between multiple characteristics like race and gender. Again and again, we find that our priorities reflect the experiences and the perspectives of the people who set the agenda in public health and beyond. From 1990 to 2015, global maternal mortality rates fell 44%. But in the United States, where we spend more money per capita on healthcare than any other country in the world, maternal deaths actually increased by 16.7%. The only countries with rising maternal mortality rates are Sudan and Afghanistan. And within the US, Black birthing people are 3 to 4 times more likely than white ones to die from pregnancy-related complications. When I came to Congress in 2019, I co-founded the Black Maternal Health Caucus with my colleague, Congresswoman Alma Adams, and I introduced the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act to tackle this crisis. I suspect that if there were more Black women in Congress, there would have already been a Black Maternal Health Caucus before I was elected. But out of over 12,000 members of Congress in our country's history, fewer than 40 Black women came before me. These are the kind of blind spots that result from a lack of representation in places where decisions are being made, threats are being analyzed, and problems are being solved. The evidence shows that these blind spots are dangerous and we need to prevent them. In fact, I'm a case study for the very point I'm making. I'm a nurse and I'm a scientist, and I was not involved in traditional national security disciplines before coming to Congress. But serving on the Homeland Security committees, I brought my healthcare experience to national security discussions time after time. It's informed and it's strengthened my work to improve health security at the southern border, oversee FEMA's response to the pandemic, and fight vaccine disinformation. I've seen firsthand how it makes the national security policies that I write stronger. If I weren't at the table, that perspective would be missing. Diversity itself makes us safer. Our cybersecurity workforce needs people of all different backgrounds and experiences because they each offer a perspective that would be lost if they weren't at the table. Less diversity means more blind spots in our threat assessments and fewer creative ideas for solutions. With cybersecurity threats increasing every single day, those are risks that we simply can't afford to take. So I'm grateful for everyone who's taking the time out of your day to make our nation a safer place by figuring out how to build the diverse cybersecurity workforce we need to tackle the challenges we face. I'm especially excited to see movements like Share the Mic in Cyber working to link talented leaders from diverse backgrounds with professional opportunities in cybersecurity. But we're just at the start of this challenge, and there's so much more work to do. I wish I could stay with you for the full discussion, but I know that you're in good hands with this impressive slate of panelists. I look forward to continuing this important work with all of your help. Thank you so much for having me, and take good care.
Thank you so much, Representative Underwood. I cannot think of a better kickoff for this session. I think, you said if you want us to remember one thing, it's that a diverse security workforce makes us safer, and it is a strength. That is exactly our conclusions and the message that we want to impart across this entire effort and going forward. So thank you so much. We know you're very busy, so you go on to the nation's business. So next, I'm going to turn it over to two of my my Aspen colleagues, Meha Alawalia and Mai Sisla of the Aspen Tech Policy Hub. Meha and Mai will be giving us a brief overview of the report released today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vivian. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Meha. I'm the program coordinator at the Aspen Tech Policy Hub, and I'm joined by Mai, who's our deputy director. And we plan to start our presentation underscoring some of the importance of diversity in the cybersecurity field, but we really can't put it better than Representative Underwood just did. So Mai, if you could jump ahead a few slides, we'll get straight into telling you the small way we're hoping to contribute to change in the space. So while there have been a lot of conversations about improving diversity of the cybersecurity field, those conversations have typically shared a couple of common pitfalls in that they often include participants of similar backgrounds and positions, they don't come with clear metrics to track progress and success, and they haven't always had the right support from leadership to make real change. So last year, with support from the Hewlett Foundation, we set out to facilitate a different kind of conversation. Click, please. We convened a group of over 60 cybersecurity experts who truly represent the diversity of the field. They span different ages and stages of their career, come from different backgrounds and positions, and represent everything from academia to journalism to big tech and government. Over the course of 2 roundtables, we asked the experts to come up with concrete recommendations for better supporting underrepresented talent in the field, and we really pushed them to be specific in the action items and metrics they proposed. We divided the participants into 5 subtopics: education, recruitment and hiring, retention, mentorship, and shifting the narrative. And we asked them to split their recommendations into 2 kinds. The first is actions that single actors, like companies, individual executives, and nonprofits, can take right now with the resources they already have. And the second is actions that would be extremely meaningful to the cybersecurity field, but would require additional support, such as funding and staff time, to get off the ground. And for the sake of time today, we'll just focus on that first set of recommendations, which are actions that would be hugely meaningful for the cybersecurity field and should be priorities for future investment. But we, of course, encourage you to browse the full report for a list of actions you can take right now. And we'll get started with education. So the education group recognized that a huge barrier of entry into the cybersecurity field is that most jobs require expensive certifications that are hard to obtain. With more time and support, the cybersecurity field should investigate whether certifications are even a necessary requirement at all, and if they're an effective gauge of a candidate's ability to perform a cybersecurity job. They should also investigate how diverse participants fare in apprenticeship programs, which could be a great alternative path into the field and would not require expensive certification costs. And there's already a great example of this kind of alternative pathway that we want to highlight. The Department of Defense and the NSA recently launched the Cybersecurity Education Diversity Initiative, or CEDI, which matches students at minority-serving institutions and historically Black colleges and universities with paid internships at private sector security companies. And as other programs look to be built to expand access points into the field, this can be a great model of such a program. Next, we'll turn to recruitment and hiring. So on recruitment, the group emphasized that no matter how qualified a candidate is, that person doesn't have equal access to a cybersecurity opportunity if the hiring process is biased against them. They had a lot of suggestions for actions that individual employers can take now, which we encourage you to browse. But with even more time and resources, the cybersecurity field can create 2 key resources for all employers to benefit from. The first is the creation of a group of pro bono experts who can help employers rewrite their job descriptions without jargon. By steering away from jargon and focusing on the core competencies required for different cybersecurity roles, candidates will be able to realize that they are able to do the job and are qualified to apply. Next, the field should also consider whether the current criminal background check process is appropriate, fair, and equitable, or whether it only discriminates against candidates of diverse backgrounds. On that de-jargoning piece, there's already one extremely valuable resource in the ecosystem that we want to uplift, and it's the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education's Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. It's quite a mouthful, but I think they go by NICE. The NICE framework does a great job at clarifying common cybersecurity roles and the specific knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform them. So for a cyber defense analyst role, for example, the NICE framework offers lists of the different kinds of requirements an employer might want to list in their job description. And by keeping this standardized and easy to understand, different employers can use this to streamline their hiring process and make it easier for candidates to understand the roles they're qualified for. And if the cybersecurity field is to adopt the pro bono team that our experts suggest, this repository would be a great starting point for their work. And now I'll hand it off to my colleague Mai to talk you through the remaining categories.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Neha. So the next topic that our roundtable experts discussed was how to improve retention in cybersecurity and technology companies. In our retention conversation, the participants talked a lot about how DEI initiatives within organizations, if they really want to tackle this retention problem, need to have buy-in from C-suite executives and from top leadership because it requires an organizational-wide change. But currently, there are very few incentives for C-suite execs to actually make progress on promises that they make. Because of this, our group recommends establishing a mechanism to hold executives publicly accountable for their commitments. This would help make progress on a variety of goals, including improving retention rates. For example, a task force might present cybersecurity executives with a list of DEI goals and actions to accomplish these goals with well-defined success metrics, such as improving retention rates of diverse employees. This task force might also collect pledges from executives who understand that they will be assessed against these metrics. A task force might also maintain a website that's accessible to the public where exec progress is tracked against these success metrics. You could sort of see a color coding system where organizations are highlighted in red, yellow, or green, depending on whether they are meeting their stated goals. An example of something similar is an anti-racism pledge tracker that our colleagues at Aspen Digital spearheaded in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. On their website, they track the various DEI initiatives and commitments from US tech and media companies that were made in the following weeks. This online resource summarized and made more visible the steps that these companies plan to commit to. Building off of this, our roundtable participants envisioned that a tracker could be updated like this to see whether these commitments have actually been achieved. Our next topic area that our roundtable participants focused on is improving mentorship. Research has shown that engaged mentors are highly valuable resources for diverse professionals. A lot of organizations have built their own mentorship programs, and there are a lot of lessons learned that we could share. With that, our roundtable participants recommended that a coalition of experts should identify mentorship best practices and create a platform of shared resources. To prevent cybersecurity organizations from just designing their own mentorship programs from scratch, this coalition of experts would be able to create a shared set of resources that other organizations could pull on. This coalition might also be able to survey diverse professionals and figure out where they would benefit from added support. It could also facilitate collaborations among organizations by creating a network. So for example, a student counselor who is trying to advise a student on cyber careers might draw on this network to find a cybersecurity professional that the student can shadow. In that vein, many cybersecurity, here are a couple of examples of cybersecurity organizations that have started mentorship programs that could be great resources for this coalition of experts to pull on. So Girls Security is an organization that works with high school girls college to career to improve the diversity of the national security industry. One of their core components is a phased mentorship model, connecting girls with a student or professional. Other organizations like Women in Cybersecurity have mentoring programs that have assisted hundreds of women in their cybersecurity careers. Both Girls Security and Women in Cybersecurity have best practices. They have training programs that could be shared across other organizations. Last, improving DEI in cyber will require a more fulsome shift in the narrative. It can be difficult for diverse candidates to see themselves in these jobs since the field remains so overwhelmingly white and male. To create a more inclusive cybersecurity workforce, the field must collaborate and redefine the narrative around cybersecurity work and professionals. In that vein, our roundtable participants suggested creating a public multi-platform campaign that would specifically target younger professionals. This campaign could be targeted at middle and high school students and would show students that the cybersecurity field welcomes practitioners who come from diverse backgrounds and are proud of what they do. One of our close partners on this project, Share the Mic in Cyber, does a wonderful job at this. You may have seen their work on social media already. The campaign pairs Black cybersecurity professionals with prominent allies in the field. Allies lend their social media accounts for the day to elevate their Black practitioner partners' voices and stories. Our roundtable participants noted that a campaign like this has been super successful and could be targeted at younger students and across organizations. So with that, Neha and I have just skimmed the surface of larger initiatives that can be created to make cybersecurity a more diverse industry. In addition to the recommendations that we discussed, which would require additional investment, our report also discusses recommendations that organizations can take now to make some of these goals a reality and really make a difference in the field. And again, I encourage you to look at our report to see all of those recommendations, which can be found in the Zoom chat. And with that, I will bring it back to you, Vivian.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that great comprehensive summary. There'll be a test at the end of this webinar, so I hope you've memorized all of them. But the cheat sheet is in the chat. So again, thank you so much. So now I'm really happy to introduce our panelists for this morning or this afternoon, depending on whether you're on the East Coast, who will discuss the results released in today's report. And moderating that panel is my colleague and Aspen Tech Policy Hub Director, Betsy Cooper, who has spent so many years and done so much good work in cybersecurity policy. As a reminder, we will have Q&A. So at any time now, you are welcome to drop your questions in the Q&A button. I think given we've all been on Zoom for a year and a half, you probably know where it is at the bottom of your screen, but drop it in any time. We will get to it later. And if you feel comfortable doing so, please add your name and your affiliation. It always adds good context, although that is not mandatory. And with that, Betsy, I turn the baton over to you.
Thank you so much, Vivian, and thank you everyone for being here. We're extremely excited to get this report out into the ecosystem and to see real change for diversity in cybersecurity. And so I'm thrilled to have an amazing panel here who will help us put color to these recommendations. I'm going to introduce them each in turn and ask them each the same question, which is, why is now the right time to build an inclusive cybersecurity future? So first, I'd like to turn it over to Lodrina Cherne, who's Principal Security Advocate at Cybereason. And I'm thrilled to say she's an incoming Aspen Tech Policy Hub Fellow starting her program in the next hour or so. So Lodrina, what do you think is the right time to build a cybersecurity future?
Thanks, Betsy, for the question, and thank you to all of the opening speakers. So right now, we have this huge cybersecurity talent gap, it's often called. And I was looking this morning at CyberSeek, which has numbers on just how wide this gap is. There are 464,000 current cybersecurity openings that are unfilled. So this is a huge problem that we need to solve. And by we, I'm going to quote CISA Director Jen Easterly, who says, "Cyber is a team sport." So by we, this means everybody attending today in our greater organizations. And judging by that huge number, what we've been doing so far hasn't been working. So we need to figure out what to change. And this report gives great recommendations for us to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to introduce Ron Ford, who's the Cybersecurity Advisor at CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Ron, why do you think now is the right time to build an inclusive cybersecurity future?
Great question. And I really feel and honest that, yesterday was the right time. People are just catching up to why it's important for us to expand in cybersecurity, just not focusing on engineers or specific skill sets, but also looking at what people can bring to the table, whether you're Black, white, or different spectrums, and even, different diverse groups. So, it's really important for us to really get other critical minds into the conversation, and that includes African Americans. It includes everyone who has the opportunity and has the access. And that's the other part of this is access. We talked about that in the report as well, expanding access to the job market, to those arenas that, really does kind of, impact, national security. This is a national security issue when you think about it. And that's kind of the frame of mind that I really think about. I've been in this, arena for 20 years now. And, I've been typically, one of a few, in the conversation, in the meeting. I think, the panelists here can also agree upon that. And it's really, the time is now to really harness that energy, motivate it. And as the report really focuses on, is putting action into those goals.
Fantastic. And that really reflects a lot of what I think Representative Underwood said. So thank you for those comments. Next, I'd like to introduce Karyn McMullen Harker, who's the Global HR Business Partner for Cybersecurity at Accenture. So Karyn, why do you think now is the right time to build an inclusive cybersecurity future?
So many great things have actually been shared. And I guess I would add to the conversation, if not now, when? And, I think it's really important that we start to see ways to bring in large groups of diverse individuals so that the people in the organizations and even those who are younger can start to see pathways to security careers and cybersecurity disciplines. And I know a lot have talked about the importance of bringing diverse backgrounds to the table. For us as a professional services firm in cybersecurity, we cannot possibly anticipate all the types of threats, vulnerabilities, or things that might cause cybersecurity issues if we don't have diverse perspectives coming to the table together. And so it's extremely important for the safety of the nation, of course, but also for the safety of our clients as well. So it's extremely important for us to do that. And it's something we need to be focused on immediately, to Ron's point, if not yesterday.
Fantastic. And last but not least, I'd love to introduce Camille Stewart, who's the co-founder of Share the Mic in Cyber and also the global head of product security strategy at Google. Camille, I know you have thoughts on this. Why is now the right time to build an inclusive cybersecurity future?
Thank you, Betsy. Yeah, to Ron and Karyn's point, we are already too late. We've got work to do. But it is important because it's not just a workforce issue. As Karyn started to outline, it's a policy issue, a strategy issue, a threat mitigation issue. It gets to the very heart of the work that we are trying to do. We cannot be effective if we don't understand the threat. Cybersecurity is a human-centered discipline. There are people who are the malicious actors and people we're trying to protect, which means we have to understand how technology shows up in the lives of our users and the people we seek to protect, as well as how malicious actors can manipulate the technology in our lives. And so without having a diversity of lived experiences and backgrounds represented amongst the ranks so that we can be innovative and get ahead of the complex and ever evolving threats that lie ahead of us, we will always be playing catch up. And so diversity is a national security threat, but a national security imperative. We need to do this work if we are going to meet this moment.
Fantastic. And I think, well, first I'd like to remind everybody that we'd love to take not just my questions, but your questions. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen so that we can incorporate your ideas. And so I think the panelists here have really hunkered down on the idea that this is a national security imperative that we need to improve diversity. And so the report gives us a number of recommendations. And so I'd just like to get the panelists' reactions to a few of these recommendations. So first, the report recommends investigating cybersecurity certifications. So I'd love to hear if any of you have experience with cybersecurity certifications. Do you think they're currently effective at building a more diverse workforce? And if not, how can they be improved? I'll let anyone jump in on that one.
I'm happy to share some thoughts really quickly to get everyone started. For us at Accenture, certifications are certainly interesting. And I think that they can go a way to build capabilities and skills and awareness of security topics. But for us, it's not the only thing that's important. And in fact, we don't require it in a lot of our job descriptions. We offer the opportunity to our employees to actually get certified, and we pay for those certifications and to sit for those certifications. So if that's something that someone wants to do to further their education, we're absolutely supportive of it, but it's not a prerequisite to be in our cybersecurity practice. In fact, we find that a lot of people learn through working with one another on certain kinds of key topics. So I think providing the opportunity of certifications is an excellent thing for organizations to do, but requiring it just shuts people out of the game too early on in their careers.
Great, thank you. Camille, you want to jump in on this as well?
Yeah, well, I recognize the desire to create a baseline, which is where certification started, identify a common set of information that people have to enter a role. Certifications have become a tool for excluding people because we're requiring them early in people's careers, when many of these certifications require 5 years of experience, but a junior role requires, a CISSP, et cetera. We are not creating other pathways. It becomes a hard barrier for folks rather than one pathway into an organization. And then there aren't a lot of support for folks who cannot financially meet the burden of paying for these heavy certifications because they're all very expensive. So I'm always heartened when I hear organizations that don't limit their hiring to folks that have certifications. There's nothing wrong with that being a part of demonstrating your skill set and capabilities. But when you have limited yourself to only candidates that maintain certifications, you are closing the door on folks who, for a number of other reasons, including financial limitations, background limitations, there are people who aren't good test takers. You're closing the door on a number of candidates that could demonstrate those skills for you and learn those skills in other ways.
Fantastic. And, this sort of brings into account the entire hiring process and the need to improve hiring. And so another key focus of the report is on collecting better data so that employers have more knowledge about how best to hire for cybersecurity jobs. So I'd love to hear, have any of you seen this issue in practice? What would help improve data for cybersecurity hiring?
Great question. And I think, from a federal perspective, I've spent the majority of my career in federal civilian service and have seen the job announcements evolve, over the last 20 years where, to Camille's point, about the barriers that you see, whether it's the DoD implementing the 8570 standards for certain levels of skills and certifications, and also looking at, what skills are, required versus ones that are nice to have, looking at, those pieces of data where, the entry points are still, I would say, pretty challenging for someone who is interested in jumping into the cybersecurity arena. I teach part-time as well, and there are undergraduates and graduates who are looking to get into the field, and they're met with these barriers, about, as Camille highlighted, about having 3 to 5 years of experience just for an entry-level job, where it's not realistic. So, the part about the data is really understanding what the data can tell you, as well as, are you collecting the right type of data points and key performance metrics so that you can understand whether, you're getting the wide pool that you're looking for of candidates, or are you really focusing it down and distilling it down to a small set of people who might have those skills. And I think that because of those barriers, you really continue to miss out on people who are interested in getting into the field, and they just don't have the resources. They don't know what the entry points are because they might be promoted in certain areas, such as job fairs, or at colleges and universities, or specific career fairs for military. You have to really kind of continue to expand on those opportunities. So I think the data is one way to look at it, but also understanding, are you collecting the right data points as well?
Great. And Ron, a follow-up for you from the audience. So Natalie asks what CISA specifically is doing on this front to bring in diverse workers. She asks, is there a hope that the new cybersecurity talent management system could help with these issues? So could you give us a little insight into what you're doing these days?
Yes. So I can't specifically speak to the talent management system because it's new to me as well, and we're all getting sped up on it. But the hope is, and just from my understanding, especially with Director Easterly's intention, is to really open up the job field, to understand how current employees are meeting those standards, as well as continuing to open up paths for career involvement and escalation. The career talent management system is there to provide that support for those future employees who we really want to bring on board, and try to meet them in a place where we typically haven't met them. We really have continued to try to evolve the agency, and we've only been around in name for 3 years, but we've been under the DHS umbrella for a very long time. And because we've really have separated ourselves into our own separate component, it's given us the flexibility to really understand, what are the career fields that we need to focus on besides the technical, and the more operational aspects, but also looking at those diverse groups that might not have the technical skills. So that talent management system is a kind of a path forward and a roadmap for people who are looking to gain entry into cybersecurity. And as highlighted earlier about the NICE framework, that is really essential as well. The NICE framework has been out for 3 or 5 years now or so. That's where we kind of meet those two different areas on creating those pathways for people who might not have have had that access and entry point, where now we're really trying to be intentional. And that's one of the things that I think that you can probably, really gain a lot from Director Easterly and from our former director, Chris Krebs, was being intentional about expanding our stakeholder and our partner audience, to bring in diverse groups of people, because it as Camille mentioned earlier, it's about creating an environment that creates a wide range of thought and ideas, because we're continuing to fall behind.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And so I want to turn to Lodrina for a second. So Alexis Field asks, do you think enrolling in cybersecurity boot camps is an effective way to gain knowledge in this field? So how would you react to some of the points made earlier? You're about to embark on one, so maybe there's a bias here, but I'd love to hear how you think about those opportunities as well from a hiring perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the question. And I can speak to that as somebody who is, like Ron, also an educator. I teach digital forensics for the SANS Institute. So in that role, I see students from undergraduate all the way through professional development there in my classes, and also students who are there through a wide variety of scholarship options as well. So I'm a big fan of boot camps and certifications myself with that background. However, I do think there is a certain point, especially for people who are trying to enter the job market, where certifications really aren't everything. People who are hiring, they're not looking to hire a certification, they're looking to hire a person. And I think that's the most important thing that you want to get across as you're starting your cybersecurity career. This is very near and dear to my heart as somebody who recently worked with a mentee who just got her associates, who is just trying to enter the industry, who has, a degree, who has a number of certifications. And as my mentee was working on yet another certification, at some point in her job search, I had to pull her back and say, all right, you've done enough boot camps, you have the knowledge. It's really time to focus on making yourself shine, rather than all of your boot camps and experience in that role. So again, you're hiring the person, you're not hiring the boot camp graduate.
Karyn, did you want to jump in as well?
I would love to. I fully agree with that. And one of the things that we've found to be particularly helpful is when we do bring in entry-level individuals, we're really opening up the scope of the kinds of degrees or experiences that we're looking for. So we are hiring music majors and literature, science, and arts majors and all sorts of backgrounds. And then we are providing for them a boot camp type opportunity, but infused with a consistent use case throughout that they are working on and presenting at the end to our leadership teams. In fact, across Europe, we've been doing that over the past several months and had extreme success. We require at least 50% gender diversity in those boot camps that we run. And we just opened it up in India with a commitment to upskill 100 women. We had 693 applicants from our organization alone. So we're going to upskill all of them, which is just amazing. So I do think these combinations of upskilling programs, plus the practical application, the use cases, the work on soft skills and presentation skills throughout is a really impactful way to go about it.
Thank you. And so with this next question, I'll start with Camille. So one of the recommendations the report makes is to get senior leadership invested in diversity and equity initiatives. So one of our participants here, Michelle Winters, says, as a minority in cybersecurity, I struggle with making people actually listen and care about the why. So do you have any advice on how to enlighten them? How can organizations hold their senior leadership accountable for DEI goals? So Camille, I'll start with you and then open up to the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make a business case that resonates with the organization that you're in. And I find that not only articulating why this is a good thing to do, the right thing to do, but how it is tied to the mission and the work can bring people along on the journey. I hope at this point we are not having the baseline conversation of why DEI is something that they should pay attention to, but driving them towards making sure that there are investments and that there are incentives for them to carry forward the work that they're doing. And I think that at all levels, you can hold leadership accountable. On an individual level, you can ask about the commitments they've made, you can elevate those things, you can have one-to-one conversations. And that starts at middle management and all the way up. But it is also starting things at your level and making the business case through action that this is something that yields fruit. So I would say a combination of things. One, you can make the case more broadly by tying it to business outcomes and business drivers, because maybe at the end of the day, they are going to prioritize it in the budget and the resources of people and time, et cetera, based on a business case. But then also in terms of accountability, on an individual level and collectively through employee resource groups, your managers, all of those things, you should continue to hold them to account to the commitments that they have made or the lack thereof.
Fabulous. Other thoughts from the panel? How do we get senior leadership invested in these initiatives? Lodrina, please.
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that we're focusing inward. And Mai and Meha shared the diversity tracker earlier in this session, where a lot of organizations are saying that they will pledge to have a more diverse workforce, or that they maybe are pledging money to local organizations. Well, first, let's turn that conversation inward, look at our leadership and look at our boards. And two is ask some tough questions of that leadership in advance of situations coming up. So even if you have, let's say, somebody who's contributing to the bottom line, a star salesperson, for example, if that person who is making and going over their quota quarter over quarter is not supportive of diversity efforts, is that something that your leadership is going to turn and look the other way on? Or is your organization going to say, well, thank you for your contributions, we wish you the best of luck, and part ways with that person because they don't support your greater diversity goals? So I think it's really asking these tough questions and hopefully asking these questions before you encounter those situations.
Thank you, Lodrina. Next, I want to highlight another recommendation in the report that I hope will get some attention. It points out that criminal background checks can often be a barrier to participation in cybersecurity jobs, and this particularly applies to governments. So Ron, I'd ask you, have you seen this issue in practice, and what can we do to ensure that criminal background checks are not an overarching barrier to improving these diversity goals?
Yeah, thank you for the question. As a Black man in America, I am typically the exception. I'm not typically the it's not the expectation that, that you would see someone, be successful and, navigate a 20-year career in cybersecurity. There are a few of us, I probably know a few of them, but, it's not typically a part of the career path for, people who look like me. I see myself as someone who was fortunate that, I had the right vision. I was in the right environment. I don't consider myself lucky, by any means. I think luck, really, focuses on, and I think we all kind of know the typical phrase about preparation meets opportunity. But I happened to just be in the right place at the right time, and I looked at this opportunity 20 years ago and saw that I was in a good position. I got my education. I really tried to focus a lot on what I wanted to do. A lot of people who look like me don't have that opportunity. A lot of people have backgrounds that are not typical for the average person in America. But for looking at the Black community, specifically, there's an incredibly high percentage of people who have criminal records, because of minor infractions or felonies, and that really limits the career path or even the life path of people who look like me. And when you have those obstacles in front of you, it really does, I think, limit kind of morale wise, and socially wise, where you can go in your life, personally and professionally. So, having those background checks, I think, is one piece of the puzzle that I think employers should be able to consider, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. Even for someone who's trying to just get an entry level job and they're just trying to get reacclimated into society, if the employer sees that as the first stop, and that's the one thing that will keep them from hiring someone, I really think it's a existential issue where you really need to consider the entire person. They're reaching out, they're applying for positions, they're being proactive in seeking out opportunities. At least give them a chance to be interviewed for the position. And regarding looking at hiring practices or working with human capital and human resources, when you see these barriers already in place, especially for the federal government, it really does limit and puts up a huge wall where we can use those opportunities to create new career paths for people who want to get reestablished in a career. So I know it's more of a long term problem and a long-term solution, but it's something that we shouldn't consider as the end all be all. If someone has a checkered past, that if they're reaching out to us and they're and we're looking at what they've done up to this point, we should consider that as really as a positive, instead of looking at it as a negative.
Awesome, thank you. And we're getting close to time. So I want to quickly ask Camille, maybe if you could start with this one. How can we best inspire organizations to move on these recommendations? So Wade Wallerstein asks, how should policy adapt? But also, how should companies adapt? So if you're going to give one takeaway for how we can get organizations to actually do some of this stuff, what would you recommend?
I would say don't underestimate the power of individual action. One of the things we've seen through Share the Mic and Cyber is that the action of one or a few within an organization can catalyze a broader momentum within the organization. And so bring it to your leadership, create an idea, but if you have to start in your small piece of the world and it grow from there, that often can be a driver for much larger change.
Fantastic. And so I want to wrap, as I often do, by asking for a bumper sticker from each panelist. So what is your top takeaway from this panel? And I will start with Lodrina.
I would say Representative Underwood alluded to this earlier, where diverse companies are more profitable. So by having diverse people, we will be stronger together.
Fantastic. Karyn, what about you?
Mine is a bumper sticker of many, which is there are many things we need to be focused on, and trying to do just one thing will not get us all the way there. So just a concentrated effort across many fronts will be really impactful.
think we're going to need a bigger car. I guess we're having a truck. So Camille, what about your bumper sticker?
It would be, don't let short-term wins cause you to negate the long-term investment. It is just as important.
Fantastic. And Ron, last word?
Meet people where they are. We highlighted in the report earlier about historically Black colleges and universities. Partnerships are just the same as they would be for what we call, PWIs, or predominantly white institutions. You have to meet people where they are. Go have career fairs, develop partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities. We have several that produce high caliber, high talent candidates.
Well, and thank you all. And my bumper sticker is have hope. With people like these in leadership positions trying to lead for cybersecurity diversity, I think we have a bright future ahead. Thank you so much. And over to Vivian to close.
Thank you. My bumper sticker is diversity makes us stronger and safer. That could fit on a little car. So I just want to thank everybody, all our panelists today, your insights. This was just wonderful. Everything we could have hoped for. We hope that organization and funders take the recommendations released today and move forward with concrete initiatives that will actually demonstrably improve diversity in the field. This is not the end of the road for us. We're still in it. Again, you can find the report in the Zoom chat and we'll send it in the follow-up. Thank you again so much to the Hewlett Foundation. Thank you to Congressman Lauren Underwood for her remarks, Meha and Mai for their expert summary of the recommendations. Camille Stewart, thank you for being such an amazing critical thought partner in all of this. Betsy for moderating and for being a wonderful person. And to all of the dozens of roundtable participants who helped us craft this and fine tune the recommendations. We couldn't have done it without you. And finally, a big thank you to our beloved Sevilla, who played such a critical work. With that, we're closing today's event and we thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Bye.